We've got Absolute Batman, we got Absolute Wonder Woman. In the not too distant future, we'll have Absolute Superman, and the 3 pillars of the new Absolute universe will be out there. But there is more to come. And at New York Comic-Con, we did get some sneak peeks about Absolute Green Lantern, Absolute Martian Manhunter, and some more information on Absolute Flash. And I'm just going to put it out here. The Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter stuff ain't passing the smell test, homie, if you know what I'm saying. Something don't feel right about this stuff. We shall see what happens there. But these are first looks and previews and initial reactions, before we read the book. But hey, that's what we do here, and that's what makes it fun. Starting up with the more important book of the two, DC unveiled a first look preview of Al Ewing and Janoy Lindsay's Absolute Green Lantern. Ewing revealed that Absolute Green Lantern will have similar aesthetic to other Absolute Universe titles, including Absolute Superman and Absolute Wonder Woman. Absolute Green Lantern will reimagine the titular group and is described as a first contact story that will incorporate multiple lanterns alongside JoJo Mullen's fine ass, including fan favorites like Hal Jordan and Jon Stewart. And this is something I think you and I likely suspected all along. The only real teaser images out there from Janoy Lindsay, the artist, are of JoJo Mullen's fine ass. It's none of the actual lanterns itself, because they would like this lantern to kind of be the new lantern for everybody. Has not worked. I think a lot of people kind of resent the character at this point because there's already way too many human lanterns and they just keep throwing them on there. And a lot of times it feels like it's for diversity's sake. If you look like the last handful of lanterns thrown in there, Jess Cruz, you got Simon Baz, you got Teen Lantern, you got Joe Mullen. There's an Asian lantern in there that I think he inherited a ring from his grandma or something like that. You're always doing kind of weird stuff like that. Whether that was the intent or not, that's kind of the way it feels after you see these things time and time again. And I don't think that a Green Lantern title fronted by JoJo Mullen's fine ass is really viable long term. You can get a miniseries out of it. I hope they're not expecting this thing to go on for the long haul and really be an ongoing. Al Ewing, the writer, when I think about what he does well, really Green Lantern does kind of fall into his wheelhouse of stuff that he enjoys and is capable of actually doing pretty well. He does the cosmic stuff pretty good, but he's very, very suspect. He really hasn't had what I would consider a good book since Immortal Hulk. Although I did like his Ant-Man 40th anniversary thing, but that was like 4 issues miniseries. And then we had the Wasp one, and that was absolutely terrible. But he's had way more stuff like Avengers Inc. than he has like Immortal Hulk as of late. Have you been reading Immortal Thor? Kind of a train wreck. Not a lot of fun to do there. So I don't know that we're going to be getting the best Al Ewing, but we're certainly getting the Green Lantern that you and I and probably everybody would have expected to be incorporated into the Absolute Universe. And, quite frankly, it's an enormous mistake. It should probably be Hal Jordan or Kyle Rayner, the 2 solo lanterns that have actually sold comic books, in the past, but they want to do something different. And I guess it's making the statement or something like that, but we shall see. I'm definitely going to check it out because I am an enormous Green Lantern fan, but my hopes are not high, and that doesn't really pass the smell test. You can just see how Absolute Green Lantern could fall apart very, very easily. The more troublesome title of the two, bringing Absolute Martian Manhunter to life, is creative team of Dennis Camp and artist Javier Rodriguez. And the new series will hit comic stores in March 2025. On Twitter, Camp wrote, and I'm going to do my best Dennis Camp voice on this one, trying to sound cool. This is probably the most radical reinvention of the Absolute line so far. And I think it's a testament to the atmosphere of creative freedom that the editors and Scott Snyder have fostered on this line. He was also this book's greatest champion. Basically, Scott and I had a 3-hour-long phone call where we talked about life, our ambitions, etc. He explained that what he was doing with Absolute and basically said, pick any character outside of the big 5, which were all taken. The whole DCU was on the table, and I picked Martian Manhunter. I'm glad you did. I'm glad you did. Not that Martian Manhunter is a bad character, but in the pantheon of DC heroes I'm interested in, Martian Manhunter is lower than a lot of them. He's definitely lower than what's a character that doesn't sell? Black Lightning. He's definitely lower than a Hawkman. Oh man, I would definitely put him lower than Impulse. Martian Manhunter's pretty bottom of the barrel for me. He's an interesting character, but he's not my favorite character. If you want to read a good version of Martian Manhunter, I will put this one out there. Go read The New Frontier. Great Martian Manhunter story in there by an absolute legend. You might want to skip on the Dennis Camp. The entire DC lineup was mine for the taking, except for all the ones that sell. You chose Martian Manhunter. Oh, man. This is great news for me because I know it's not going to be good. Who cares? I'm reading The Ultimates by Dennis Camp, and it's fucking brilliant. I've never seen anything this stupid put out like this often. I'm absolutely loving it. And if Absolute Martian Manhunter can bring me 50% of the joy that The Ultimates does, I will never give this book up until they cancel it for low sales, which probably won't take very long. And I'm sure you guys noticed it. You know, the cover art that's out there of Absolute Martian Manhunter by Javier Rodriguez, an artist I actually like a lot. Kind of looks like Gumby. Kind of a weird choice. Why did you make Martian Manhunter look like Gumby? He's already got enough working against him, being named John Johns and kind of having a, I don't know, Deus Ex Machina type fucking power set, you know, where he's just kind of all powerful. You know, his big fear is obviously fire because his wife and daughter were burned alive. Of course, Tom King had to turn that into a kink. That was really weird. I don't imagine Dennis Camp is going to do that, but he could. He likes to do weird stuff. I like Javier Rodriguez as an artist a lot. In fact, if you're reading the current, what is it? Zatanna Bring Down the House from Mariko Tamaki, a writer I don't particularly like, the Javier Rodriguez art on that book is the reason to check it out. But he's not doing a lot of monsters in there. You know, there are a few kind of monstrous things, but that's definitely not his forte and certainly not what his art style lends itself to, is to doing kind of weird, abstract kind of monster creatures like a Martian Manhunter. So I think it's a really, really, really weird choice. And it's a waste of a really good artist on a really bad writer. But I'm here for it, baby. You know, fuck it. Make Martian Manhunter look like Gumby. I already don't like the character. Make him look ridiculous. Like, you can't offend me. Maybe he'll be non-binary. He'll be a furry. You know, what else can we throw out of this character? Because every time Dennis Camp introduces a new character in the Ultimate Universe, which is the only thing he's been doing in the Ultimates, every week he introduces a new character that you never see again, never to be visited ever again. And they've all got like this like stupid, like lefty on Twitter making a bold statement that nobody really thinks is in contention. We shouldn't nuke islands. Oh, really? What are you going to do with Martian Manhunter? We shouldn't burn women alive. Oh, man, I'm glad you had the testicular fortitude to put them out there for that one. Making stances that everyone agrees with. Oh, man. So that's probably going to be really good. But it's Dennis Camp. And if you're expecting a book worth reading and you're a Martian Manhunter fan, I'm sorry. You got Dennis Camp. And you're going to get camped, baby. Finally, we did get some more information about Absolute Flash. Writer Jeff Lemire unveiled the first look preview and discussed the upcoming series at New York Comic-Con. Absolute Flash writer Jeff Lemire stated his vision of the Scarlet Speedster, much like his Absolute Universe counterparts Batman, Wonder Woman, and Superman, will start from the ground up. The preview also showcases the Absolute Universe iterations of classic Flash villains, Captain Cold and Captain Boomerang. Now, the only reason I looked this up, because I was reading another article and they mentioned that Absolute Flash would exist without the Speed Force in the Absolute Universe. And I was like scratching my head. I was like, man, you know, I understand that the Speed Force didn't exist technically when Flash was introduced, or even like when Barry Allen was introduced, you know, the second Flash, because the concept hadn't been introduced and all that kind of stuff. You kind of think about the Speed Force when you think of Flash. And I look back and I can't find anywhere where Jeff Lemire said there would be no Speed Force, because I was like, I don't think you'd have a Flash. Like, that would be very difficult. But we did get to see some villains. I thought that was at least of note. I like Captain Cold. He's one of the coolest villains out there. You know, very, very street level, not all that powerful, but he is an enormous thorn in Flash's side. And Captain Boomerang, I'm not quite as in love with that character as other people are, but he's obviously pretty cool as well. So there you go. We're going to have a couple of villains introducing themselves there. And I'm sure you noticed also in the artwork, it looks like Wally West dad will be involved in this, and there will be no Barry or Jay or any of that stuff. I imagine we'll end up seeing them in cameos. As far as my long-term outlook for the Absolute Universe, this is the series, Absolute Flash, that I think has the most long-term potential to actually be like really good and have a lot of readability to it even in the future, because I think Jeff Lemire, just my own personal take and my own personal preferences of all the writers that are involved with the Absolute line, I think is the best writer, and it's not even all that close. So we'll see what he ends up doing with that one, but we are going to see some very familiar villains. You know, wish they would change it up a little bit more, but you do want to add some things that are familiar to it, and Captain Cold is very, very familiar. And I personally am growing out a mullet of solidarity with the new Wally West of the Absolute Universe. I don't know that I'm going to get any pegs in my ears or like that little septum piercing that he's likely to have, but I will have the mullet growing it strong for Dallas Fan Expo. Really appreciate you all joining me today talking about some of the other Absolute updates from New York Comic Con. If you would like to get a sample of what Dennis Camp is really all about, maybe you're not familiar with him, my good friend Jim and I had a great time talking about the best comics of the week. But before that, we talked about just how bad his Ultimates was, and we shit all over this thing for about a good 20 minutes. If you haven't seen this, you got to check it out. It's absolutely hilarious. We have a lot of fun with it. Do not take this man seriously. He is not a real writer.